Hey Hodies, welcome to my channel. My name is hautemesstom and thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're going to be doing an eye for an eye with the Natasha Denona Yucca palette. Now this is content I owe you, I've owed you for some time, and today we're finally doing it. If you are new to my channel, my Eye for an Eye series is a series to help me and help you. It's to help me figure out whether or not an eyeshadow purchase was good for me. What I do is I try to dupe out the eyeshadow palette with eyeshadows I already have. So I have a lot of depotted eyeshadows, I have a lot of single eyeshadows, and so I try to use those eyeshadows together to make my own version of the palette as close as I possibly can. If it's really hard for me to dupe out the palette, normally that means I probably made a pretty good decision, and if I can dupe it pretty easily, then it might be that maybe that wasn't the best purchase for me. Now, everyone is welcome, absolutely, to navigate the beauty space however they would like. So if you like pink eyeshadow palettes and that's all you want to buy is pink eyeshadow palettes and that works for you and you cycle through them all, that's great. But what I try to do for me and myself is to not have too much of stuff. But I also tend to prefer similar color stories. I really love green eyeshadow. It's my favorite kind of eyeshadow. So these grungy tones in the Yucca palette with these oranges and these greens is something that really appealed to me, which is why I bought the palette in the first place. I also do like Natasha Denona's formula. There's like a bunch of reasons why I did purchase this, and what was surprising to me and what you'll find in the footage of me building out my eyeshadow palette, which normally I do these intros with the eyeshadows already on my eyes, I actually was surprised to find out that perhaps I don't have as many of these shades as I thought. So I always feel like I'm always buying murky green eyeshadow color stories when I'm ready to buy an eyeshadow palette. Now, I'm not super into eyeshadows. It was actually pretty strange for this Yucca palette to come out and for me to want to buy it at this point in my makeup journey. It's eyeshadow's not speaking to me, which is so funny. I just watched a video from Lauren May Beauty. I think she was talking about new releases and she was like, the eyeshadow palette is dead. And I was like, yes, it is. In my head, it is. I know to many of you it is not, and I think what I hope from what Lauren has noticed is that the eyeshadow palette could be dead, but the eyeshadow palette is probably dying because the brands have gotten lazy with their color stories, and also we've seen a lot, so you need to sell to the next generation. But skin is what the next generation is all about. Gen Z is all into like clean skin, good looking skin, although they've been dabbling in more high pigment foundation, more full coverage, and maybe they will start getting into eyeshadow the way we did in 2017, 2018. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that eyeshadow palettes, it's like coming from all angles. I don't think consumers want them as much. I don't think that the brands are doing a very good job with color stories. I felt like this was kind of an exception. I took some overhead footage. I don't talk you through it. I kind of zoom through it. You can see me going through all my eyeshadow palettes to pick out what I ultimately have as my dupe, and I also swatch them next to each other on my arms. Now I'll bring you back here and we'll do some application together, but I have a feeling this might be my worst one. Normally I go into these pretty brazen and confident because I'm like, there's nothing I don't already have, and for some reason this palette stumped me pretty good. So let me just walk you through. I'm not going to tell you the exact shades of anything because that is not the point of this particular video, right? My point in this video is to inspire you to be inspired by your own collection and maybe do something like this. Dupe out the palette before you buy it. See if it's something that you're going to use. So dupe it out as best you can and then have that magnetic palette available to you and see how much you're grabbing for it. I think that's the best way to know if you're going to like use an eyeshadow palette a lot, is to like dupe it out, see how much you use your dupe of it, and if you use your dupe a lot, then it might be worth it to buy the real thing. I have a couple of Cliona shades. I think I have 2 Cliona shades, or maybe just 1. No, I think I have 2. I have some Natasha Denona Metropolis shades in here. Actually, I have quite a few of those. I have this shade from Violet Voss. It was in there like, they had like a neon palette that I had, and I depotted all the shades. Some Natasha Denona other palettes with the full-size pan, and then one shade from Lethal Cosmetics. To kind of reflect on the experience of picking out the eyeshadows, my murky gurky greens must really exist in my palettes. And I did not pull out my Natasha Denona Gold palette because I do like that palette as a whole, and I know I can remove those pans easily. I've done that with other Natasha Denona eyeshadows, but I'm keeping that one intact. And I'm currently doing a project with my eyeshadow palettes where I've removed all of my palettes except for the Yucca. I mean, there are other exceptions too. You'd have to go watch my intro video to that project. What I'm trying to really do is love some of my single eyeshadows and my eyeshadows that I have depotted and try to really get down to which eyeshadows I actually like. So that's the project. So I got rid of my eyeshadow palettes temporarily to see if I missed them at all. I'm not really missing them yet. There's a lot of nuance in the mattes, and I actually don't have a lot of single mattes. They all came from palettes that I depotted. So I had 2 of the Natasha Denona 28 pans. I had the Natasha Denona Sunset palette, and then I have like random mattes from other things. I have some from Noctex. I have some from Melts, you know, it's just like a random assortment of mattes. And the mattes in here are all nuanced, right? So there are 2 shades in here that kind of look brown. Flax up here, and then the shade Valley, but Valley is really orange, and Flax was maybe the only color that was actually like neutral enough where I felt like the matte eyeshadow that I picked to dupe it out was very similar. When it came to this new formula from Natasha Denona, it reminds me a lot, without being multichromes, it reminds me a lot of the glitter multichrome formula from Cliona, where there's like pigment to it and like tons of texture and sparkle. I couldn't really like dupe them perfectly. I went with my gut, followed my heart a little bit. So I think the nature of this is to try to get the eye looks to look as similar as possible on both eyes. And I think today what might happen is I might just end up using 3 shades. And that, I know that's not a lot, and I definitely have used 3 shades in the past, but I'm going to use them strategically to make them look as close as possible. So that's my new challenge here, is to try to match them. It's absolutely okay that they're not going to match all the way, because the reality of it is that I already own this palette. It's already in my hands. The real purpose of the project was to figure out if I already had this palette just hidden in my collection somewhere. And I think honestly, the project could stop right here, because I don't feel like I really nailed it. I think when you see the arm swatches next to each other, it's a lot closer than it felt whenever I was duping it out like shade by shade. So I think we're gonna use some shades that I actually haven't used yet from the Yucca palette on my eyes, and we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna prime my eyes and then I will zoom you in. I'll be using the Blink eyeshadow primer, and I'll be setting that with a translucent powder from Pat McGrath. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to do like a soft wing shape with the deep shade down here, the deep brown down here. I'm going to do Elysian all over the lid, and then I'm going to do Camu Camu on the inner corner. So something that's been interesting as I've moved myself into my filming nook. This is like a new space for me. It's not a new house, it's a new space for me. The lighting is interesting over here, because if that half of my room is very dark, you can see the shadow of the room encroaching on the background. So I have like my overhead lights on, and I also have a light just shining onto the back wall just to like add some more light. I just now thought that maybe I should turn the lights on that side of the room as well. I don't know, I'm learning things. So I had to like turn on an extra light on this side to balance lighting. Just YouTuber things, but like just know that's like really hard being me. my brushes really need to be washed. So what we're not going to do in the comments is get smart with me about that. I've acknowledged it. I know that it's necessary. And I know that it's necessary because I keep getting unwanted shimmer on my eyes when I'm putting eyeshadow on. So that's like fun. Fun for me. Love that. I'm going to start with the Yucca side, and that's going to be on my left eye. I'm taking that deep brown shade. Like I said, I'm just gonna like build like a little bit of a wing. I don't think it's gonna be like a very usual, like it's not gonna be like an incredibly unusual eye shape, but typically the way that I do my looks, I do it very like by the book, like a crease shade, a transition shade. That's like what I do a lot. And this look, I'm just, going a little bit different, but again, not entirely. That's the Yucca side. I'm going to use my Sigma switch to go from this palette to my self-made palette. The shade that I'm using from my self-made palette is from the Viseart Grand Pro 1X. I'm gonna balance out the shape a little bit on this side. I just used my Sigma switch again. Gonna go back in with the Yucca shade and just bring it up a little bit more. These are the two deep browns. This was one of the shades that I felt very confident that I had like really nailed in matching them up as far as what I had in my collection. But like a chocolate brown wouldn't be too hard for many people to dupe out in their own makeup collections. So I'm not feeling like you're always gonna get more of them, right? Like anytime you buy an eyeshadow palette, for most of the time there's like a deep brown in there, right? There's like almost always a deep brown. So now I'm going to take a lesion. I'm gonna use my finger to apply this one. I'm just gonna smack it all over the lid. And I'm just gonna buff out the edges a little bit with a blending brush so that it's just not all, which doesn't feel like it just stops. I want it to look like it blends into that brown. And then actually the shade that I duped a lesion with is from the Natasha Denona 28 Pan Green palette. So it is another Natasha Denona shade. I actually feel like the one from the 28 Pan Green palette is just like a lot bolder. And I think it has like some more texture to it. The formula is a lot thicker. Something very interesting about these shimmers from the Yucca palette is like they're very light. They're very, like when you pick them up, it almost feels like you have nothing on your finger. Like they have such like a just a very light feeling, whereas the feeling of the one from the green palette is much thicker. And I think you can even see it in the formulas here. So this one is from Yucca, the one on my middle finger, and then this one is from the 28 pan. You can just kind of tell like that formula is a lot thicker. So that's really interesting. It's like almost that this is version 1 of the shade and this is version 2, like the sheer I don't want to say more elegant. I just feel like that right now, like a little bit of a sheerer shadow with more texture is like a little more popular than what's going on over here. Like there's just like more base to this, more umph to it. But like, I think overall, like the effect is like they're kind of similar shades. It's just this one is not as impactful as that one. I'm gonna try to add a little bit more on top, but I don't know that that's going to solve the problem. Not that there's a problem. So that brought the pigmentation like kind of on par, but it took a couple layers to do the same thing. So maybe Natasha's older formula is gonna be better for those who want like more instant impact, and then the newer formula, I mean, not that I don't know. I know that there's a whole Natasha Denona cinematic universe of the types of formulas she makes, but I don't know if like she's rolling out this old formula or not, but it just feels like same shadow, 2 eras. Like that's what it feels like to me. And now I'm gonna take Camu Camu on the inner corner. It is like the neon like green shade in here. Now I'm going to use this yellow from Violet Voss. I think it is going to be more yellow and have less of that like green feeling, but it is a neon. Yeah, it certainly is very different. This is definitely yellow. This is definitely like pukey green, pukey green. I can't really stand here and tell you that like they look at all very similar, but like I didn't have anything like this in my collection. I'm not really into, I've been more into like pastel looks recently. It's not something that I've up until this point built my collection on, so that was why I was like, whenever I have to find a pastel to dupe out, like it's almost like a neon pastel. It's kind of like, I don't really have that, but this was still a better match than a lot of the other shadows that I tried to dupe out. That wraps it up. I do have my little dupe for the Yucca palette. Is it the perfectest dupe? No, but that's not really the point. The point is to just either prove to myself that my purchase doesn't really have a lot of overlap in my collection or that it does. And I think I learned that the Yucca palette, while at base level seems like something that I should be able to dupe several times over in my makeup collection, it turns out that I couldn't. So let me ask you, is there anything that you do that's similar to this to try to make sure whenever you're buying a new eyeshadow palette that you're buying something that is going to feel fresh in your collection? Or do you just buy the same color story over and over again because you like that color story and you rotate through them because you just like having the different options and formula? I'm not telling you that either one of those things is right or wrong, but that's what I like to do. I try to diversify my collection a little bit when I'm bringing something new in. And I just have to be really excited about something for me to bring it in anymore, specifically when it comes to eyeshadow. Like I have to be wowed. I have to see it and go, that is not something that I've seen or had before, and I would like to try it. Anyway, if you happen to be new to my channel and you made it through this whole video, I would love to have you subscribe. My channel, as you probably could tell, is loving my makeup collection as it is first and foremost. I do also do reviews of new makeup, but I do try to keep what I actually keep in my makeup collection relatively curated just for myself because I get overwhelmed when I have too many options, and also just to show you, hopefully, what a more realistic makeup collection can look like. As someone who consumes a lot of beauty YouTube, and some of my peers who have a lot more makeup than me, I understand and have definitely had that feeling where it's like, oh man, I would love to own like every piece of makeup all the time, but in reality, I'm not ever going to use all of that makeup, and I'm not particularly interested in swatching things next to each other, and I think that would be the only real reason to warrant that, is to be someone who like really compares and gets into the nitty-gritty of formulas and comparing things to other things. Anyway, I would love to have you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. And I'm also on patreon.com if you would like to support me there. There's no pressure to. I do extra content there and my podcast with my friend Kackie of Kackie Reviews Beauty. And I have some merch if you want to check that out. There's some summer styles, but most of it is stuff for colder weather. So if you live on the other side of the hemisphere, it probably would suit you more than it would suit people who are experiencing summer right now. Also, I'm nominated for Best of Pittsburgh, and you can find the link to vote in the top of the description box, and I would really appreciate your vote. Anyway, that's it from me. Remember to follow your haute, and you'll find me, baby. I will see you in a video very soon. Bye-bye. Friend.